The year was 1747, and the wilderness of Kentucky held secrets darker than the moonless nights that shrouded its rolling hills. Along the old trading route that wound through Millbrook Valley, there stood an inn that welcomed weary travelers, with warm light spilling from its windows and the promise of hot meals and soft beds. The Cunningham sisters ran this establishment with quiet efficiency. Eleanor, the eldest at 28, managed the books and greeted guests with her gentle smile. Margaret, 26, prepared meals that filled the dining room with savory aromas. Catherine, 24, tended to the rooms with meticulous care, and young Beatrice, barely 22, served drinks with a grace that made even the roughest frontiersmen mind their manners. 4 sisters, dressed always in their modest black dresses with delicate lace collars, moving through the inn like shadows in candlelight. They spoke softly among themselves, shared knowing glances, and seemed to anticipate each other's thoughts with an almost supernatural understanding. Travelers spoke fondly of Millbrook Inn in the settlements. The beds were clean, the food was excellent, and the sisters treated every guest like family. Men would return from long journeys singing the praises of the Cunningham hospitality. Some claimed the sisters possessed an almost magical ability to know exactly what a weary soul needed. But as months passed, a troubling pattern emerged that few noticed at first. Samuel Morrison, a trader from Virginia, had stopped at the inn in early spring. He'd written to his wife about the kindness of the sisters and promised to visit them again on his return journey. His wife never received another letter. The trading post where he was expected never saw him arrive. Thomas Whitfield, a surveyor mapping the Kentucky territory, had mentioned Millbrook Inn in his journal as a beacon of civilization in this wild country. His final journal entry was dated the same night he'd planned to stay there. His body was never found, though his horse wandered into a settlement 3 days later, riderless and spooked. By autumn, whispers began to spread through the settlements. Too many men had spoken of staying at Millbrook Inn, only to vanish without a trace. Families waited for loved ones who never returned home. Trading partners wondered why their associates had broken agreements without word. The truth was far more sinister than anyone imagined. The Cunningham sisters had indeed offered love to their visitors, but it was a love twisted by grief and madness. Years earlier, their parents and 3 brothers had been killed in a raid, leaving the 4 young women alone in a hostile wilderness. The trauma had broken something fundamental in their minds, creating a shared delusion that grew stronger with each passing month. In their fractured reality, the sisters believed that the men who stayed at their inn were sent by Providence to replace their lost brothers. They welcomed each guest with genuine warmth, seeing not strangers but family members return to them. They would prepare special meals, laced with herbs gathered from the dark corners of the forest. These plants, known to the Cherokee as sleep-bringers, would render their guests unconscious within hours. The sisters would then carry out their grim ritual. They believed that by burying these men in the earth behind their inn, they were planting seeds that would somehow bring back their brothers. Each grave was tended with the care of a flower garden. They would visit daily, speaking to the buried men as if they were still alive, sharing news of the inn and asking for guidance in their daily tasks. By winter's end, 53 graves dotted the hillside behind Millbrook Inn, arranged in neat rows like a twisted family cemetery. The sisters had marked each with a simple wooden cross and planted wildflowers that would bloom come spring. To them, this was not a burial ground, but a nursery where their new family slept, waiting to awaken. The illusion shattered on a cold, February night when a party of militiamen arrived at the inn. Captain James Fletcher had been sent to investigate the disappearances. He and his men approached Millbrook Inn with weapons ready, expecting to find bandits or hostile natives. Instead, they found 4 young women in black dresses, setting the table for dinner as if nothing in the world was amiss. Eleanor greeted them at the door with her usual gentle smile. "Welcome to Millbrook Inn, gentlemen. "You must be cold and hungry after your journey." The captain's questions were met with confused stares. The sisters genuinely didn't understand why he was asking about missing men. In their minds, no one was missing. Everyone was exactly where they belonged, sleeping peacefully in the garden they had created with such loving care. When the militiamen discovered the graves, the sisters showed no guilt or fear. Instead, they led the men proudly through their garden, introducing each grave as if presenting living relatives. "This is Thomas," Eleanor would say, touching a wooden cross tenderly. "He was a surveyor. He's resting now, but he'll wake soon." Margaret would add, "And here's Samuel. He tells us the most wonderful stories about Virginia." The truth of what had happened at Millbrook Inn struck the militiamen like a physical blow. These 4 young women, broken by loss and isolation, had created their own reality where death was simply another form of sleep and murder was an act of love. Captain Fletcher faced an impossible decision. By law, the sisters were murderers who had taken 53 lives. But looking into their faces, he saw not criminals, but victims of a wilderness that had already taken so much from them. They had not killed out of greed or hatred, but from a desperate need to rebuild the family that had been torn away from them. The captain made his choice. He ordered his men to burn Millbrook Inn to the ground, but he allowed the sisters to walk away into the forest. Some say they saw 4 figures in black dresses disappearing into the morning mist, never to be seen again. Others claim the sisters simply faded away like smoke, their purpose finally complete. The graves were left undisturbed, marking the final resting place of 53 men who had sought nothing more than a warm meal and a safe place to sleep. Over time, the wildflowers the sisters had planted grew thick and beautiful, creating a meadow of unexpected beauty in the Kentucky wilderness. Today, if you know where to look, you can still find that peaceful meadow where Millbrook Inn once stood. Local historians have documented the story, and the graves serve as a reminder of how tragedy can twist love into something unrecognizable. The Cunningham sisters had indeed offered love to their visitors, but it was a love so broken by loss that it became indistinguishable from death itself. In the end, they had created the family they desperately needed, but at a cost that haunted the Kentucky wilderness for generations to come.